experience. I'm sure we all have personal experiences that we can share with your encounter with the ocean. I have mine from Keta, and I believe that is the best when it comes to this country. But you have any experiences you would want to share?
Right, thank you. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. I'm delighted to be here. You're right. I think the ocean is one important part of our planet, and we have all kinds of different interactions with the ocean. More often than not, we don't actually think about how that impacts us. But I think as a geophysicist, my early days in this industry, I spent quite some time offshore in the exploration for oil and gas. And I must say, in the early 90s, the world was rolling out the GPS, which is the Global Positioning System. And it was one amazing change in the life of offshore explorations. I mean, just to give you an idea, I'm sure that if you ask anybody where Movenpick is, he can just give you a direction. It's next to Ministry of Energy and all that. But you don't think about it when it's offshore. I mean, if there's a location offshore, what are you going to tell somebody? Is it next to where the big fish is or whatever? Now, it might sound very simple, but this is a huge challenge to be able to know your exact location when it's offshore. And that's why the coming in of GPS was such a huge change of the world, that today, to the extent of a precision of about plus or minus a few centimeters, you can actually say, this is the location I'm looking for. And it was the beginning of a huge opening of the oceans in the world. And I thought that was spectacular.
That's a huge encounter for you. Well, how about you?
Well, as a local, good morning to all of you. And it's really a delight to be here. Actually, I came in a few days from the U.S. And when I was coming, I said, well, I've been invited to be on a panel to discuss, blue economy. And I said, well, you're an oil company. What do you really care about the ocean? And I said, hey, wait a minute. That is where my business is. Cosmos being, a deep water, exploration company. That without the ocean, we don't have a business. And being local Ashanti boy, growing up, my mother would tell me, don't ever get close to the water. You don't belong there. So I've always shied away from the ocean until I just went to the U.S. and I was pushed into it. And coming now to run, Cosmos's business here, and as Theo said, going offshore and seeing the marvel of what we have out there, it's quite mind-boggling. And also stepping back and realizing that we are really surrounded by ocean wherever we go. And it's about time we really stepped up and figure out how well we can really treat the ocean the right way to serve us right. We are passing through, and we want to make sure that we prepare the place, a better place for the next generation to follow. And if we just sit still and not do anything about what's happening to the ocean today, I don't think future generations will, excuse us for that. So
that sums everything up. I have two Mensahs today, so I'll do Dr. Abrampa instead of Dr. Mensah Abrampa. Well, I'm sure you would want to share your brief experience when it comes to the ocean.
Yes, thank you very much, and good morning to all of you. I spent, I think, my childhood, 15 years of that, living at the coastal areas. My father was a teacher, extreme western part of the country at Kekam. And in those days, the road was so rough that if you're waiting for a car to take you to the Ankobra River, where you had to cross with a pontoon to the other side of the world, you virtually stand waiting for 3 hours. So myself and my cousin, who was a bit older than me, we used to walk along the coast from Kekam through Asanda, Bobrama, all the way to the coast, and that's about 5 kilometers. And we enjoyed that so much, walking in the sand, sometimes running, chasing birds and doing that. So I spent quite a lot of time there. I was also fortunate when I went to secondary school at Second D, and I did a lot of work to a new Takoradi. What I've done for the past 5 years is to go back and look at those places. Kikam, some 30 years after, Sekondi, and particularly in New Takoradi, where I did a research there on the coping strategies of fishermen in response to poverty. And you could see that within this space of time, there's a huge change. Huge change, what I call deforming the coastal line, bringing in other human activities, which has reduced all the natural aspects of these coastal areas. And I think that came to me when I also started working, particularly in urban areas, in coastal areas, and I saw the human activity virtually going on, deforming these coastal areas, and then also changing the livelihood sources, which was based on the natural environment, more to the artificial environment, and therefore the coastal human relationship reducing over time.
Okay.
Thank you.
I'm sure Mr. Fiatu is always on the high seas since you're dealing with maritime issues. You briefly want to share yours?
You're not wrong. Thank you very much, and good morning to all of us. I think, like you said, I can describe myself as a fisherman because I was born in Kita, and I've been on fishing expeditions with my colleagues and other senior members. So I've had a very close relationship with the sea. Unfortunately, my recent relationship has to do with the devastation that has been occurring, especially at Kita and other parts of the country, where tidal waves are destroying our coasts. And so I am excited that in Ghana we are beginning to have the platform to discuss the oceans and the effects that climate change is having on it and the negative impacts on our society and communities. I'm very excited to be here, and I think that I should be commending the SDG unit for this great initiative, and we shall have the discussions. Thank you.
But I was hoping to hear any of you talk about your cruise moment. It doesn't look like any of you had any cruise at anywhere. Oh, okay. But Mr. Fiatu, since you've had a close encounter with the sea, I'm sure many of you have heard people say that the sea speaks. Does it? What has it been saying? Have you heard the sea speak? Has it said anything?
Yeah, I think it does. That is cultural to some extent. That is why mostly when you are engaging in policy, they say that you should talk to the indigenous people because they have had some cultural relationship with the sea. When they go on sea, there are certain things that they observe, and in their own way, they are able to communicate. You and I may not understand. Maybe I do to some extent. Okay. It does, because like the human body, we say is made of 70% water. The ocean is 70%. So what our body communicates much is the liquid that is in it. And so the ocean communicates to those who understand it.
Okay.
Yes.
Well, we'll talk about the health of the ocean as part of our discussion as well. But Dr. Abrampa, you do a lot of policy planning. He mentioned policy. That's the reason why I'm coming to you in terms of collaboration. Are there any success stories in terms of partnerships, collaborations, let's say between governments, indigenous people, those who really will make things work? Really, do we have these success stories when it comes to blue economy and in terms of, collaborations?
Yes, this is very, very important, and that is something I eat every day, because the focus of my work is to make sure that we're able to pull together all these energies. Because we know that in our work and in development, there are components, and the ability to harness the opportunities and energies of each component and bring them together to work as a system really brings the success. We've had so many things, and if I look at it in practical terms in our country, developing a policy means that it has to evolve from some real practical actions from the ground, which means that sitting at the top and developing a policy over there might take you from the quite far away from the source of the action. And therefore, I always call it the cross collaboration, making sure that You take it from the community, link it to the district, the region, all the way to the national level. And then at the national level, and that is very important, going through the vertical system often is easier because it goes with authority and rules and others. But where we need to collaborate horizontally among the institutions, that is where the challenge is. Because if you are looking at the blue economy, there is no one sector, and let me describe it, well, ministry or agency that can tackle that issue. No. And therefore, we need to work across. It has to do with sanitation. It has to do with fishing. It needs agriculture. It needs water and sanitation. It requires something that had to do with industry. It has to do with energy. So if you look at the span, it means that there is no one sector that can deal with it. And from where I sit, we need to bring all these institutions together to be able to work it out. And therefore, I always look at it this way. The policy, the plan, must be very, very inclusive. It should be integrated, interdisciplinary, and it should be such that it is convincing. Again, you should also have defined targets and boys that you can use to measure. And there's always a tendency in Ghana, I call it the verbose plans. It becomes verbose when you don't plan with resource in mind. And therefore, the financing is very important. Other than that, at the end of the day, you will not be able to implement. So these are things that I look at. And I think that it's also key for the blue economy. We heard yesterday a lot about plans. And I heard 3 major ministries. I was asking myself, where is Ministry of Energy in this? Where is Ministry of Communication? Because we have all these fiber optics and other things going through the sea. Where are they? I was asking myself, where is Ministry of Agriculture? That is using all these chemicals. Eventually, they end up in the sea. So I was asking myself a lot of questions while sitting here. Why these 4 ministries? And I asked myself, where is National Development Planning Commission in this whole process? So I think that we must go beyond components. We must think through systems and how they are connected to be able to deal with the issue of the blue economy. There are experiences. We're doing this for the water sector currently, and it's yielding results. We've gone through a situation where we brought in strongly the private sector to take up this role in water, sanitation, and hygiene. We've gone through a process where we are also strongly bringing in the private sector to work in the area of energy. And these are all things that we have existing examples which we can use for the case of the blue economy.
I'm glad you mentioned private sector, and I'm sure Theo and Joe will help us in that regard, because yesterday I was wondering, it appears that the plans are made, yet private sector is always left out. The plans are made at the policy level. We have ministries, agencies, departments putting these plans together without collaborating with private sector per se. Have we had that kind of collaboration, you would say? Because they would say that it always happens, but maybe on our blind side. So share with us, does that happen? Maybe Joe can start with that.
It is very true that we have not been, engaged, involved. But I'll take us way back in 2014, when Cosmos first, came in here doing work. There was a lot of collaboration between Cosmos and the Ministry of Fisheries and then EPA. When the Western region, said there was impact to the, fishing business in the area. We conducted a study and then really got experts involved to really collect enough data to get some insights as to what is actually happening, and it was presented to the whole public. When I went back to take a look at all of that, and I'm saying to myself, since then, I haven't seen any more work. But Cosmos as a company, we've done serious work in Sao Tome, Suriname, and we are doing Mauritania and Senegal today, serious collaborations with these countries in terms of what's happening into in the blue economy and the impact of the business that we have in those places. That is something that, as I sat here yesterday listening to, and that's what Prof was just talking about, it was conspicuously missing, that we don't have the linkages to do that. We're talking about issues, problems, and all of that. And when I first came out of school as a chemical engineer, my first job was environmental engineering, building treatment facilities in the US. I will surmise to say that I don't know how many treatment facilities we have here in this country. And yet about 85% of our wastewater goes into the ocean today without treatment, which is just not good. But if there's serious collaboration between government and industry, these are issues that could be tackled head on, and it will make it serious, positive impact in what we're trying to accomplish. So collaboration is important, and I really feel very strongly that we shouldn't just talk anymore. We should act with serious plans.
Your experience in Sao Tome,
Yeah.
as against what you experienced in
Yeah.
Ghana, is there a vast difference?
Well, because Sao Tome, we were getting in there as a new business, and it's an island, sitting, water all around them, and therefore every little impact, negative impact, will have some ramifications. So Cosmos being, very serious about the environment, safety, and all of that, we took it on ourselves to engage them. And then they were very receptive with open arms. And of course, we funded every, aspect of the activity that we go to make sure that, the ocean and everything really gets respected, handled well, make sure we have policies in place to prevent oil spill, and if indeed it happens, what we'll do about it. We put all these structures in place to make sure that our things will go well. And I think we could do similar things here.
Okay. Pio, how about you? Partnerships such that we don't end up planning and it stays on the shelves.
Well, I believe that what we are having today is a good beginning, okay? As has been said many times, the ocean is about 70% of the landmass of the world. So you can think about virtually every ministry and its impact is there. So everywhere in the world, you have what we're experiencing here. I mean, you talk about the ocean in Gulf of Mexico and whatever, and everything you can think about. You talked about the fiber optic cables. I mean, that's communication, agriculture, and everything. So this is an opportunity for us to see how we could link them. We wouldn't be able to have one ministry that does this. It doesn't happen anywhere in the world. But I think knowing, and I was pleased when I had the SDG team visit me in my office. We had a fantastic conversation. And at any given time when there is a conversation about the blue economy, you see aspects that you haven't thought about, and they're coming all the time. The thing is for us to be able to take stock of how, as a country, we are already interacting with the nation, with the ocean, what regulations are in place, what are our comparative advantages, how we can impact strongly our economy through the ocean, and most importantly, protect the oceans. Because if you think about the impact, for example, of the Gulf of Mexico spill, I don't think the world ever thought about how the Bacando incident would have impacted the world. It changed the whole world. So really, this, sits very broadly on collaboration. I think what the team has started is fantastic. Every now and then you see a new entity whose inclusion will make the whole effort worthwhile. And so I think it's a good beginning, and we must build and move forward.
Well, we're getting into the effective partnerships, and we'll get into the benefits and the solutions shortly. But CSOs also, it appears that you have a role, but from what we're hearing, it appears we all wait for governments to approach before that partnership can be effective. As CSOs, also from where you stand, are you also making any moves to ensure that this partnership is effective, or we want to wait, government plans, then we start criticizing?
No, I think as CSOs, our job really is about research and advocacy. And out of this, we propose policies. So, of course, we are very much involved in policy suggestions to government. In fact, 3 years ago, our center was advocating for government to come up with the integrated ocean partnership or policy. And for us, the decision of the SDG to come up with a committee to draft the Sustainable Ocean Plan is a response to that call. So CSOs are working, advocacy gets results when things like this happen. Government listens, state agencies listen, ministries engage the civil society organizations, and then we get the actual result that we need to get. This SOP is coming on board to tackle all the challenges that we are talking about, and eventually will benefit from the gift of the oceans.
Okay. This SOP and the technical group that you've been working on so far, what would you say are some of the key highlights of the things that you've discovered that we need to bring to the fore?
The work started not long ago. I think from next week we are hitting the ground. We are moving from one coast area to the other to engage the communities. So the discussion is going to start from there, really. Yeah, that is where we are now.
Are the local communities, you say, involved in this, in our drive for this blue economy? Or we are just doing it and leaving them out of it and impose on them?
No, that is why we are going to engage them. We want to involve them in the decision making. They are the ones who understand the ocean better than those of us in Accra or even in policy. So they are going to be an integral part of the plan. Whatever they suggest, whatever they think, what they know is what we are going to do to make sure that the right decisions are taken.
Okay. Dr. Bampa, at least you do a lot of this planning. You know the local government system as we speak. We've seen what we did with the green economy, such that now we're having a lot of communities rebelling, and reason why fighting illegal mining has been very difficult. Reason I'm coming to this issue about effective partnerships. We've talked about partnership with private sector, partnership with CSOs. How about the local communities themselves? Are these partnerships effective?
That is very important. I'm sure it started from when my colleague spoke about the role of the primary users of some of these resources, including the sea. I remember in Western region and in Central region and in many other regions, the fishermen have their own means of managing some of these resources, and they have particular terms that they use. For instance, there are seasons within the same as ours. They measure their seasons by the behavior of the fish. So for the bounty season, where they can do effective fishing without taking up the fingerlings, they call it Maura, for instance. And so that is the season they do intensive fishing, and they know the particular area that they have to do their fishing. If you come closer to where the lagoon enters the sea, that period, there are a lot of sanctions that will go against you as a fisherman. So they do all these things in their own experience and observation, and sometimes they add a bit of taboos around them.
Including not fishing on Tuesdays.
Exactly, not fishing on Tuesdays, and then a particular net you cannot use in a particular season. And then sometimes they have their own means of scoping within the time that it is a lean season for fishing. They do other things. They mend their nets, they do boat carving. Sometimes they go, that is the time they also do their own. Very often they have their traditional systems which also control that. So in planning, we take advantage of this. We begin from what exists in these communities, and out of that we're able to shape it. There is something that we're doing now on industrial activities, particularly between Nyanyano and Winneba. There is an intention to set up an industrial development center there. And you'll be surprised to know that one fisherman just told her, look, it takes about 39 minutes on the sea from Winneba to Tema. So how did you know that? So, well, we know how our boat rides, and we know how a fast boat could do. Wow. And moving by road from Winneba to Tema can take you 3 hours. And 39 minutes, you can make that distance using the sea. So it's a huge advantage now. It's so convincing for the private sector to use this place as an industrial development center. It became our biggest argument when we engaged the private sector, that using the sea as a means of transport between Winneba and industrial site and Tema could reduce the air transportation costs about a third and even more. So these are some of the things that we do. We go with the community information, use that to really do the planning, and then involve them continuously. We also use them for what we call iterative check. Go back to them from time to time, and they will give you the information because they have stayed there. So in their course of their life, what has changed? What are the new things? What are the negatives? What are the positives? So these are things we do regularly when it comes to environmental management. And there are areas which we're using that to bring it back to them. If you go to some of these mining areas, we document some of these changes and then play it back to them. Those that are engaged in legal activities, those that are engaged in illegal activities. And then you compare the two. When it becomes vivid and visible to them, you realize that immediately they begin to change. When they realize that this will affect them negatively in their lifetime, they begin to change. But when you leave it like that and you don't bring it back to them and you don't get the feedback from them, then it becomes difficult to really bring about this change for effectiveness. So it's very key that we begin a conversation with the primary users, the fishermen, the processors, and people who are using the sea, those who are making the salt. All these are part of it. If you want to stop them, let's say, from this sand mining, it's one of the biggest things. Let them know that you can't do the sand winning and continue with your salt production. You can't do the sand winning and continue with your fishing. And these are things that we need to engage the primary users. But we need to invest in them. We need to enhance their opportunities so that it doesn't become like we're taking advantage of them. Very, very important.
Okay.
Thank you.
Well, the issue about technology, the use of technology, new innovation, research, is also one area that I would want us to explore quickly. Then we can get into some of the benefits. Really, the sea, I would say, has been good to both of you because that's where you do most of your business. But let's talk about, you mentioned the issue about GPS and how it's been good. We've heard Dr. Abrampa talk about how they can just measure. Most of them don't even use the GPS, but they're able to do the things they do. Are we maximizing the use of research, technology, innovation in our dealings when it comes to the blue economy?
Well, very much so, but permit me to add a point to the comment my colleague made about collaboration. I think that's really, really very important because the users of the ocean are many. And there is a tendency for some of the users to see the new entrants as threats to them. And as he said, the dialoguing, trying to get involved, all the other stakeholders before you get in there is really very important. Now, I recall during the early days of Ghana's oil discovery in 2007, in my days in GNPC, where we had the task of doing community education with the fishermen to let them understand that there is a new entrant into the oil industry in the ocean, and yet we are not going to be a threat to them. The oil industry was suddenly responsible for all the problems that existed, and it was very difficult to convince them. For example, suddenly fishermen claimed they didn't have good fish catch because of the oil industry. And we had to do a lot of campaign explaining to them, for example, that in Norway, the fishing industry is over $10 billion a year. They have over, several tens of offshore facilities out there, and yet producing over 2 million barrels of oil, and they are coexisting effectively. For example, if you're very familiar with what is called the seaweed, we started experiencing seaweed in Ghana, and suddenly the oil industry was responsible. Yeah. We had to do some research with one of our partners, Lukoil, and with an independent research institution to demonstrate to them that this had really nothing to do with the oil industry, and this had happened in areas in Sierra Leone and other places where there was no oil production, and yes, there was seaweed. And this has to be done respectfully, for them to be able to appreciate that, look, we can work together in it. So collaboration is also important. And one dangerous thing, for example, that we had to deal with was the fact that suddenly the canoe fishermen who typically wouldn't, for example, go to, say, 65 kilometers offshore, suddenly felt that that was the place where all the fishes were. And the dangerous thing is that they came on there with their stoves and everything, basically naked fire. And remember that a typical FPSO would have a tank with over 1 million barrels of oil at the base. And this is very light oil. So you can imagine what these fires, it was a whole endeavor for us to be able to let them understand that we can coexist, but we have to do this in a way that doesn't endanger anybody's life. But the partnership went well, and today.
How long did it take for that conference?
Oh, a few years. But eventually we both understood how to work with them. And it's been a wonderful collaboration. For example, we evolved a new role, which we call the fishing liaison, where we went to the various villages and spoke to the fishermen, trained them, and recruited some of them to work on our chase vessels, because we realized that they had a wealth of knowledge that we did not understand. I mean, they could see a buoy in the middle of the sea and tell you, okay, this would be towing a net which is 2.5 kilometers, and it is drifting to the east. So when you see this way, all your vessels must go the other way.
Without any technology.
Without any technology. And there was no way with all our science we could know this. And it became a very important part of our business. And we brought them on board anytime we're acquiring seismic data. We, for example, wouldn't do any data acquisition in August where they have their bumper catch, because everybody wanted to go to sea. And if we tried one time and it was a disaster. So there's a lot of knowledge out there if you collaborate with the users of that environment. And with civil society as well, I must say, we had to deal with a lot of challenges, because the civil society organization might mean well, but if they do not have the information, they might rather make the work of the local communities difficult, because they might be thinking they want to protect them by, but if it's not based on knowledge that says that, look, this oil production has nothing, for example, to do with seaweed, and therefore don't communicate that to them, it would be a problem. So each and every stakeholder brought a lot of value to what we do, and so this collaboration is such an important thing. And the military has been wonderful in terms of activities offshore. I mean, they bring a lot of stability in the area, because in some cases, the absence of a naval chase vessel in the area creates a lot of issues for us. So yes, a lot of benefits from that standpoint.
Okay. I'll come to Mr. Mensah on this, because there's the issue also about research and innovation that I want us to talk about. But CSOs have been mentioned, and anytime a CSO is mentioned, you need to go to CSO. Otherwise, advocacy will begin shortly. So we've had Theo on this, the issue about sometimes we tend to want to protect the community, but in our advocacy and the things and the criticism and the issues we raise, we tend to hurt them instead, because most of the time we do not know what they need. But we think this is what they need.
Okay, I think, thank you very much. It has to do with proper understanding of the issues and community engagement. What some CSOs do, which creates the problem, is that they don't undertake research to be able to come up with some of the advocacies they carry out. So I believe that if you want to be an effective CSO and to succeed, you need to undertake research, understand the issues properly before you can make inputs on it. Without research and findings, it's difficult to make any objective analysis and proposals. So I think I agree very much with the senior man.
Okay. I must say we are live on all our social media platforms, and we'll make this as interactive as possible. So in the audience, if there are any questions, I'm sure you've noted a number of questions that we can also put to our panelists for you to be part of this particular engagement. I'll come to your questions shortly, but I'll take the issue about partnerships also. We'll close the chapter on partnerships, and I'm sure Mr. Mensah has some kind of experience also to share when it comes to partnerships. We've talked about partnership with government. Now we're talking partnerships with local communities as well.
Well, I think what I will actually say on top of what Theo mentioned, because those are, studies and research stuff, Cosmos as a company was in the middle of that. And that's the same thing we do in Sao Tome, and we did that in Suriname. What is the missing link I see in all of this is that we have to actually employ innovation to help us get to the next level. Technology, it's one of the few things in the world today that's getting cheap over time. And as such, we need to embrace it. Having spent decades at IBM and then coming into this space here, I don't know how many of you here know about the Cosmos Innovation Center, whereby we inject innovation into the space of agriculture. This has really transformed our agriculture in this country, and it's going to continue on. Everything that's happening in this space here, who is collecting the data, and how are we mining the data to get insights to get us to the next level? That is something that's conspicuously missing. So when we collaborate and we collect the data and then use data to really make informed decisions, we will always be able to get ahead of the game. Otherwise, we will be playing catch up all the time. So I really feel that's where the intersection point should be when we have this collaboration relationship. And private sector could do a lot in this space here. Because when you are trying to bring innovations into such a space, you cannot leave it to government alone to do it. It's just too much for government to do, and that's where private sector comes in.
Yeah, we may be updated with the research, too, but are we updated when it comes to the technology, when it comes to blue economy? Are we up to date in terms of technology? Are we keeping up with the times?
I think we are. I mean, we can do better, but we are. And as I said, there's a lot of technology out there that, for example, the offshore industry has used, which today, I mean, I sit down and ask myself, how come we didn't think about Uber 30 years ago? It's simply leveraging GPS, which has been used offshore 30 years earlier. Technology, yes, we use that extensively. The business that we do, we will get nowhere without technology. As I told you, you would see this huge facility sitting in the middle of the ocean. And it's not just sitting anywhere. The exact location X, Y, and in these days, Z of that vessel is known to a level of, say, plus or minus 10 centimeters. And to be able to know that without it being near Ministry of Energy or somewhere else is real technology. And this is an add-on to GPS, which is called differential GPS. It gives you more precision. Now, working offshore is a very challenging business. You need data to be able to decide what to do. For example, we commonly use what is called a metocean data, which is available globally. And you access that to be able to know what to do and what not to do. So, for example, if you want to move personnel from a smaller vessel to an FPSO, you wouldn't do that without checking your metocean data. Okay? If the tides are very strong and you're getting strong winds, this is not a time you want to do transfer of personnel. And so this is on your desk every time offshore when you are working.
For the layperson, what will happen if you do that at the time?
Well, I mean, it's so risky. I mean, these vessels can swing both ways, and you can have an accident, drop somebody in there. And remember that offshore people go to work with a helicopter. And when the wind is, remember, I mean, I remember explaining to a fisherman who was very concerned that our FPSOs will cloud the whole area and they won't be able to find fish. And so I showed him a very large map, and I said, the area of an FPSO is like the tip of a pin, on that whole area. And therefore, it's so infinitesimal that you can't see anything. So imagine you are a pilot flying a chopper going to put personnel on an FPSO in a very bad weather. You won't find it, and it will be very, very dangerous. So, technology and data is used extensively day by day, and we do nothing without technology. I mean, we typically on the vessel out there have a number of different industries out there. If you think about processing about, say, 80,000 barrels of oil a day, I mean, that's equivalent to 2 times what Temore Refinery does. And you're doing that in the middle of the ocean, in a very confined environment. Okay, if you think about you having to process over 100,000 barrels of oil, of water a day, is equivalent to what a small water processing company would do onshore. So you do all these things to the highest standards of safety, using the best technology to see to it that the quality of water you're injecting back into the reservoir is very high. So, left, right, center, technology is what we thrive on.
Technology. Dr. Brampa, you want to add, but I think Joe Mensah wants to.
I just want to put things in perspective. What Theo just described to you, when you get in a helicopter to go offshore, the landing pad, the helipad, is from where you're sitting to the end of the platform. That's how small it is.
Small. That's small.
So we fly, and then we have to land just right there to get onto the vessel. So it tells you how precision has to really play a role in everything that we do in this space. Very, very important. And then he's bragging about Uber here, and I wanted to just put in my piece on that. The Cosmos Innovation Center that I just mentioned in passing, we had the very first company that we created was called Trotro Tractor Limited, TTL. It's like Uber for tractors. Today you will sit in the country here and you can use your cell phone to order a tractor to come to your farm to do work, So those are how we employ technology, innovation to really change the way we do things. And we can do the same thing in this environment here.
It appears you have a lot of business ideas up your sleeves that will start tapping at this point. Maybe the benefits, it's a good time to bring that in. But Dr. Brampa, I'm sure you wanted to add briefly to the issue about just not limiting ourselves to research data and not employing innovation and technology, up-to-date technology, I must add.
Yes, thank you very much. One of my good friends is the government statistician. And so we always have conversation about information, data, and analysis. And I'm sure you agree in the country that within these last 3 years or so, we've had a revolution in terms of statistics, analysis, and information on our own lives, on technology, and in fact, most importantly, relationship. Very, very important. And therefore, I look at it this way. The technology is very key, very primary. I do some games with my team over there. We place the SDGs, one at the center, and then set up a relationship among the others. And we did that with production and innovation. And virtually everything was there, either as an input or output, or a user of it. And it's core. So we're now coming out with a document using that as more or less as a trigger for the development of this country, and see which sector will be off the radar. Virtually none, if you put that at the center. So it's very, very important. And I'm not surprised coming out with these incubators and others in the universities is becoming a core part of our learning process. What we usually fail is the linkage to the work that goes on, especially in the public sector. So you realize that the private sector is always ahead of the public sector. And once the private sector is ahead in terms of innovation and production, and they require support from the public sector, you realize that because of that information gap, it takes a long time for it to be appreciated. I am sure Uber might have been thought about some years ago, but you need to go to Ministry of Transport and Ministry of that and Ministry of that, and sometimes that is where the issue is. So we're also pushing that, given what we did, that innovation and production and industrialization are the core of the public service. And who matters? What do they need to know in terms of knowledge? So that this time could be reduced and we get closer to the thinking of the private sector, and we'll be on the same level to be able to push this development.
Okay. Well, let's zoom now into sustainable practices, because we need to talk about the health of our ocean before we talk about the prosperity that it will bring us, and then we can focus on the planet's security. But Mr. Fiatui, let me come to you, because at least you can hear the ocean speak. It speaks to you sometimes. So let's talk about the health of the ocean as it stands now. How healthy is our ocean?
Currently, we can say that our ocean, 40% of the ocean is polluted. And that is a great threat and danger to the ocean. So I would say simply that the ocean is currently not healthy. So we need to put in measures to control pollution, especially. We're talking about technology. In the developed world, they are deploying robots to be able to collect plastic from the oceans. I was reading around a document yesterday, and I found out that 30,000 pieces of plastics are found on every square kilometer of the ocean floor. 13,000 pieces. And that is a great threat and a challenge. So there is a need for ocean literacy as well. Yesterday there was a discussion about beginning the protection of the ocean from the basis. Our school children need to start having knowledge about the ocean, ocean science. Let them understand that the ocean is bigger than the land. And so we depend on it more. If you don't understand something, you don't protect it. So understanding of the ocean is key. Thank you.
Well, we know about how unhealthy the ocean is. We are told even some fishes are ingesting this plastic that is even getting into our bloodstream as we speak, depending on the type of fish that you like. So very unhealthy. But sustainable practices, maybe we can just do a quick round on that briefly. Theo, you would want to share any thoughts on that in terms of the practices that we're employing to keep the ocean healthy?
Okay, thank you. I think the ocean is not healthy at the moment. If you fly in a helicopter going offshore and you see the color of River Ancobra, the water in River Ancobra entering the sea, it will just tell you how bad we're doing in terms of that. And I think, anything we can do in this country to stop the illegal mining and the destruction of the water bodies and into the sea, we must pursue that. That's really, really very important. We must do that. Now, in terms of sustainable practices, I guess we feel that our oceans are overfished in this country, but then we must think about the fact that we are not very unique in this. There are several countries in the world who utilize the ocean that way. What makes this sustainable is that there is proper management of the ocean in terms of what to do, what not to do, in terms of what fishing nets, the closing season as we're trying to, implement here. These are really very, very important so that for the next how many years we can leave an ocean that is safe for the generations unborn. But there's a lot more that we should do as a country.
Okay. Joe, sustainable practices?
Well, I think we all heard a lot of the discussions that took place yesterday. And as I mentioned earlier, we start with education at the basic level and let people be conscious of it. That's the start.
Should be part of our curriculum, you'd say?
Yeah, I was driving, to this, function from East Legon, coming on Independence Avenue, and you see on the road, almost, water just flowing, dirty all throughout. Where's it going to land? It's going to land in our pond, and then it's going everything. Runoff is what's getting into the ocean, plus the plastics and all of that. We talked about all of this. All of us are aware. How do we actually, effect some change in this? I was happy to hear that there's a policy document that's going to be shared so that all of us could start, engaging ourselves with it. But when you talk about, recycling and all of these things here, one of the things that the, developed world have done that it's so effective in minimizing some of these things is that every plastic bottle has a fee on it where you can return the plastic bottles for money. People standing on the roads here begging for money and all of that, if you had stamps on these plastic bottles where you can return to collect a few pennies for it, they probably will be on the road collecting the plastic bottles to go get some money. So you don't see, a lot of plastic bottles thrown on the road when you are, I've lived in the U.S. most of my life, and my reference point is where there. So you 5 cents for each plastic bottle, so that you return these plastic bottles for the money, and then it gets recycled. So it minimizes that. All the policies that we have here, I never heard any such thing about really putting some, value on these plastic bottles. Because it's worthless, that's why we throw it and it's choking our drains and washing into our oceans and all of that. So I think education at the basic level, policy, creating, and then also what I am so passionate about, treatment facilities. 80% of our wastewater runs into the ocean without treatment, and that's not good. That's why the ocean is not healthy. So we do those two basic things. If we do that, it will start, changing the narrative for us.
Okay. Well, Doc, at least the data, the science points to the fact that it's very unhealthy. But is there any plan in place since you lead planning for this country? Do we have a plan in place for the ocean?
Definitely. There's a whole strategy on wash, which includes sanitation. And one of the things which I will single out, and I think it's important, has to do with attitudes. But attitudes are built right from our childhood. We still have a situation where if a child and you want to, let's say, ease yourself, they just show you the corner, between 2 blocks, go and do it there. And then you do it. You go to school, virtually in the primary school, there's no toilet. And therefore, if you want to do it, you go into the bush. And then it goes on and on. So the first time you might use, and I take myself as an example, the first time I used a water closet was when I was in secondary school.
At what age?
And that was 11 years. So, and there are, and I'm sure there are many people, village boy like myself, and a lot of village boys and girls who are going through the same situation today. And then the person comes of age, and then you introduce all these things at a go. Definitely, they will reject. And when they become adults, they take their children through the same cycle. So the socialization for real hygienic, living and sanitation, good sanitation, will have a challenge. Attitude. I have a case. It was a 6th March. A lot of, the good people in the village were on the platform. And in my house, you don't throw away plastic and all those things. So a number of children are living at my place. There's a 5-year-old girl. After marching, he came, grandfather, he came and stood by me. And the next person by me was, he drank water in the sachet and just dropped it. And the small girl just told the chief, pick it. Because that's exactly what I do to them at home. So, and the chief, just...
And he did.
Oh, wow. So it's attitude, which we are hammering. And the Minister for Water and Sanitation, the team, are really working on that. Providing these facilities right in the schools. That if you want to do it, this is how we do it. The dustbins and all that. So it is something that they will grow with it. And then we'll be able to break the cycle and not go through what we went through. Very important. The last one which I would like to also bring along is that it also takes a group action. Everybody being part of it is an inclusive work. Civil society has a role. All of us have a role. And coming out with technology that makes it easier for people to use these facilities. Very important. Finally, plastic is one of the cheapest things in Ghana. You go and buy just, watch it 5 CDs, they wrap it with plastic, then another one, a 4th one before they even give it to you. I mean, So when you come home, you buy this and you already carried it. You go to the villages, children are going to school in the morning, and you look at all of them, everybody's carrying the food in the plastic and sucking it. So these are dangerous for their own health, and where would all this plastic end? The sea. So we need to think about it. There are alternatives. In Cape Coast, on the way to Kakum, somebody has established a store. And what he's done is that he doesn't give up plastic. You'll be surprised. It's attracted all the lecturers from UCC. They go there and shop. All the tourists along the way, because a lot of them are eco-tourists, and they know that shop, it doesn't give you plastic, they go with their bags and buy. The lecturers go with their bags and buy. And this is something that we can do. So it's becoming a big market for that person, which means that if we do it, we'll respond. But 4 plastic for 5 cedis watching, and if you add the number of watches that people are selling and all that, it is a
Now
big
there's
problem.
no 5 cedi watch
Oh,
though,
yes.
I must tell you.
But that is the point. The point is that plastic is too cheap.
Too cheap, yeah.
And as my father said, my father is also Joe Mensah. So what is that we must find a way to recycle for money. When I was schooling in Germany, it was a cheap way to get money to buy water. You recycle it and you use it to buy water. But here, it's of no use and it's so cheap. So we must look at that. And it's something that I have been pushing. My team definitely will work on it and propose something for our good president, and I hope that he will take it.
Okay. At the end, I'm sure we'll get our action plan, and then we can all commit to it. So I'm told that the blue economy, if it was a country, would have been the 7th largest, because it's giving us about 24 trillion or so. If it's a country, that's where it will be. So over the period, at least between yesterday and today, I've noticed that the benefits there are when it comes to the blue economy includes the climate regulation, we are told, food, livelihoods, we are told about transport, trade, recreation, tourism. I've also talked about source of energy for us, and then biodiversity and ecosystem. But are we maximizing it? These are, you have done it, you've accomplished it. Tell us how we are able to maximize the benefits of the blue economy. Theo, I'll start with you.
Well, I believe we can do more and more and more. You've talked about many sectors. I think what is important is for us to be able to effectively put all this together and harmonize it, because the use is extensive. We need to be able to optimize. I mean, and I'll give you a very classical example. I mean, submarine cables for the mobile phone usage that we have. These are being deployed offshore and alongside areas where you have oil and gas pipelines, among others. So as much as we want to see more value coming out of it, the management of already the existing usage is very, very important, because a spill, I mean, in our business, being able to keep oil in the pipes is such a big deal. It doesn't occur to people, but when there's a spill, you can just imagine the impact. So I think we're doing something, but a lot more needs to be done for the country. I mean, we are lucky to have over 500 kilometers of shoreline and 12 months of summer. And I think the blend of these two is a powerful source of value for tourism. And for all that they have said, we need to see to it that our beaches are clean. And with the right environment, I don't see why we should even be thinking about mining gold to destroy the environment. The gold is out there with very clean beaches and 12 months of summer.
This is Big Brother. MFR, you have 5 minutes remaining.
We're wrapping up on that.
Yeah, I'll echo the same, sentiments that, Theo just said. And as most of you know, today, I mean, the blue economy is great. It's been good for us. It's been good for the country. Today, yes, we are drilling for oil and what have you, but there's more emphasis on gas. And most of the lights, what you have here, it's all been run on gas. And the country needs a lot more So we actually going to spend about $1 billion more to try to get more gas for our country, so that as we go through the energy transition that everybody talks about, moving from oil to the gas space to renewable, we will stay in that gas space for decades before we move on. So if we can really get our own indigenous gas here, it's good for all of us. And when we actually, clean, our waters here, as Theo said, tourism will be booming, and that will be great for all of us. When we create these, treatment facilities that I talk about, it's employment that's being created. So the ripple effect of doing the right thing for the ocean just goes across all sectors, and I think that's what we should focus on.
Okay. Dr. Brampa, briefly.
Yes. Thank you very much. Let me just give an example of some of the things that we can do, particularly on tourism. You realize that tourists, and even us, as indigenous people who stay in Ghana, really are attracted to areas which are neat, and that's what we want to do, our shopping and everything. So we're doing a study, a relationship between cleanliness and commerce. Because a similar thing was done in Rwanda, in Kigali, where when the city wasn't clean and when it was clean, it increased its economic turnout by 17% each year continuously. So now, instead of the government paying for the city to be cleaned, the private sector invested in that. And because the private sector is paying for that, they are also measuring that everybody who wants to travel to a clean city might go there. Could we have such a city in Ghana, as an example? So this is something that we're working
committed
towards.
to it?
Exactly.
Okay.
And then we can use it as a showcase for the others. Thanks.
Albert. Yeah, we can hear you. I think it's working.
I would say that even at the global level, we've not been able to explore the ocean to its limits. I know there are a lot of other natural resources in the oceans that are yet to be discovered. So coming from a research background, I would say that there is the need for research and innovation to be able to discover a lot more of the resources in the ocean so that it can benefit those of us who depend on it.
Okay, and I'm sure you can give us a promise to organize a Keta trip for all of us on how we are able to keep the beaches clean in the Keta enclave, and we can do same in the other areas.
I will invite you to join the SOP team with the permission from Doctor so that we'll go to Keta next week.
And I'm sure we can do a Visit Volta trip as well. Thank you so much, gentlemen, for being a part of the first panel discussion for day 2. Mr. Theophilus Ihuen is the Managing Director, MODEC Ghana. Mr. Joe Mensah is the Senior Vice President and Country Director of Cosmos Energy Ghana. I also had Dr. Kojo Mensah Abrampa, Director General, National Development Planning Commission, and Mr. Albert Derrick Fiatui, Executive Director, Center for International Maritime Affairs Ghana, and member of the SOP Technical Working Group. Ladies and gentlemen, a round of applause for my panelists once again. Thank you.
But not so fast. We have 10 minutes more to engage you. So please, short remarks or questions, just straight to the point. MFA?
Thank you. Thank you so much.
We can only take 3.
3?
Yes, please.
Okay, I have a lady. I'll take ladies. Okay, so one lady. The first one.
Thank you very much. My name is Ivy, and I'm from University of Cape Coast with the Center for Coastal Management. I think one thing that I think is missing here is partnership with research institutions. For instance, at the Center for Coastal Management, we've rolled out master's and PhD programs in blue economy, and I don't think this is well known out there. And during the development of the curriculum, which I was part, I don't think we even did justice by engaging industry to inform what we are going to even teach the students. So how beautiful it would have been if MODEC or Cosmos or the oil industry or the blue economic sectors could give us what they need so students could do research to inform their activities. So I think that partnership should be encouraged. Thank you.
Thank you. I have a lady at the back also. Yes. I can't see men, no. I don't see any men.
That's a good one.
Oh, okay, the lady at the back. Okay.
Thank you very much.
Okay.
My name is Hilda Upuku, and I am here with two hats. I'm actually here with my professional hat, which is for UN Habitat and the program we have just started on smart SDG cities. And the other one is for an NGO that I'm also part of. My first comment is as a Norwegian, and I hope my ambassador allows me to give some feedback on some of the things that have been said in the panel. We have a lot of storytelling in our panels, and sometimes they are not completely accurate. So like in the case of Norway, when it comes to oil and fishery, for example, yes, it's right that we have been doing that for a long time and that it works quite well, although there is a tension on whether we should look for more oil or not. But I want to say that there is a conflict, even in Norway, between fisheries and the oil industry. So I just want us to be accurate in what we are putting out there, so that we don't create some fairy tales that is not as it sounds like.
This is on the part of Norway, you mean?
I am just saying that it was said here that look to Norway where there is no problem, but there is also a tension even in Norway. So we should be accurate on what we are saying, because that feeds into how Ghana is also addressing these issues. Let me use my other hat, which is from an NGO that has been working on education for sustainable development here in Ghana since 2008. And right now we are working on a project, and this has nothing to do with my job, but right now we are working on a project together with MESTI, together with Ministry of Education and the Basel, Stockholm and Rotterdam Convention on marine litter and microplastics, promoting the environmental sound management of plastic waste and achieving the prevention and minimization of generational plastic waste. And we are working with schools here in Accra and in Tema, and it's kind of, what should I say, frustrating that this project never reaches up to the higher level. Because here we are talking about stories from our home, while we are actually doing a research-based approach and methodological approach to these things in the schools already together with the government. And I want to appoint Olivia, please stand up so they see you. So we actually have the coordinator of Eco Schools, which is an international program, here today. So those of you who want to hear more can see her. But my point is that we are telling all these stories without really knowing what's going on the ground. So I just want to make that clear that we have some solution to these things.
Can we bring you an invoice for this advert, please?
No, the very last one. We are talking about things that are ongoing, and we are.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Thank you. We'll take the very final one. I see a hand there. I think I can see a man now.
Okay, great. Thank you very much. My name is Vincent Kwesi Parker. I am retired from the UN, and I had the pleasure of working with Mr. Eugene Owusu when he was special representative of the Secretary General in South Sudan. I think it's evident from your discussion that there are multiple actors involved in the search for durable solution. We've talked about research, innovation, technology. We're looking at the fishermen, the women in the villages, the need for horizontal collaboration, integration, etc., etc., etc. What is missing for me is the element of ownership. Who owns this process? It's a question that I have not heard the answer for. You know, I live in East Legon. The water people come and dig the ground. They put something there. The telecommunications people come and do something else. Electricity comes to do something else. And as I watch the process and listen, basically that's what we are hearing. Okay. There are a number of people involved, but we need to find a place where there is ownership. Who owns the process? Okay. So that's my recommendation.
I'm so sorry, I can only take that one. I think we have to wrap up on that.
One quick one,
no,
very
please.
important.
No, please, thank
please,
you.
Very important.
Thank you so much, thank you so much, thank you. So there was one on
A think tank.
We'll add it to the final plan, the action plan, please. Thank you. So briefly, I'll just take a few minutes on that. At least the issue about partnership for research, hoping that MODEC and Cosmos would start partnering.
Well, maybe MODEC will pick that up. But partnership, yes, it's something that the Cosmos Innovation Center that I described to you about, we're fortunate to have Ghana and MasterCard Foundation joined us. Now we have actually expanded it in 10 universities across the country. And the last time we all got together, it is becoming a hit on these university campuses with innovation in the space of agriculture. All 10 universities are really competing to be number one. Okay. So I think it is something that we can mimic in this area here and then figure out how we can do that for the Blue Ocean.
You want to add anything to that?
Yes, just to let you know, a lot of collaboration takes place between MODEC and the other institutions. We also support SPE, Society of Petroleum Engineers, extensively in their research. Actually, over this weekend, MODEC and TALO and the other partners are going along the beach on a beach cleaning campaign, for which I'll be part of it. So a lot of collaboration in areas of research, community cleaning, support for institutions as well.
Okay, and you're sponsoring this program as well. Makes it easy for you to connect with those who can help you do that. The rest were actually recommendations and comments. So we'll leave it here for now. Thank you so much once again for your time.
Ladies and gentlemen, MFR POW and a very esteemed panel. How about a group photograph? Thank you very much. Amazing points raised. Attitudinal change and group action being the one for me. And talk of 40% of the oceans being polluted. Ladies and gentlemen, we are all complicit. You know why? Because even here, some of you have been successful in poisoning the fish inside the little pond in front of you. By giving them bread and juice, please desist from that. Every morning, they have to give them some warm water and stuff. It's been done already, so please, don't feed them pie. No, please, just leave them to breathe. Thank you very much. It's now time for the second panel, sharing country experiences and best practice in ocean action. And I believe that's where the Norwegian experience comes in very handy. We're blessed to have on this panel the Ocean Shepherd to President Ruto, the President of the Republic of Kenya, who is also the Deputy Chief of Staff, Executive Office of the President of Kenya. Ladies and gentlemen, the Honorable Josphat Nanok. A round of applause as he joins us. We make welcome the Ambassador of the Kingdom of Norway to Ghana, Her Excellency Ingrid Mollestad. Help me welcome Ghana's Minister for Fisheries and Aquaculture Development, the Honorable Hawa Kumsin. And to moderate the panel, the UN Resident Coordinator, Mr. Charles Abani. A round of applause. In 45 minutes, yours is to deliberate, and in 15, to engage us, your audience.
Thank you, Jerry, and good morning, everybody. I'm particularly pleased to have a balanced panel with two lovely women and another lovely man like myself to be on the panel. So you're welcome to this session. I mean, over the last day and today, a lot has already been said about, I guess, the benefits and the impact of the economy in the ocean for the global community. So just kind of putting some things in context here. About at least a third of Ghanaians live on the coast or near the coast, involved in economic activity that impacts their lives on a daily basis. Oil and gas is a key area. We talked about that. Fishing and fisheries, trade, tourism, among others. And that challenge of kind of keeping the ocean clean isn't just about what happens in the ocean, and I think this is an important point I want to make. That indeed a lot of what we see happening in the ocean actually happens on land first and finds its way to the ocean. And so it's important that we look at those particular things. So first of all, we all know that there's no need to learn lessons yourself that others have learned. And so this session is really about sharing and learning. Because if someone else has made a mistake, why should you make the mistake yourself when there's actually experience about that already? We also know that nothing succeeds like success. And so where we can find examples of the things that have worked, then we should be using those examples to accelerate action on the ground. And it's really important that we share those because they give us inspiration to be able to act and to be able to then, if you like, transfer that inspiration to others to act as well. So I really have a great panel here. Thank you, Jerry, for introducing the panel. We have the Minister of Fisheries and Aquaculture Development here, the person in charge, really, of much of the policy space that needs to take on board. We have Her Excellency Ingrid Mollestad, the Ambassador for Norway, a great supporter of the work that is going on. And we have Honorable Josphat Nakok from Kenya, where a lot of action is already taking place. Monday will be Environment Day, I think, and it's an important opportunity for us to reflect on this and weave this into the conversation going on. So I'm going to ask you panelists to share experience, really, and to give the high points that I think everybody can take away from this. So perhaps with you, Madam Minister, let me start first by asking you to kind of maybe lay out for Ghana where you see the importance of this and what are the drivers for you as you move this area forward.
Thank you so much. Good morning, everyone. The fisheries sector supports about 3 million people along the coast, as you have mentioned. It creates jobs. Apart from that, it also contributes to our GDP in the country. As at 2022, we're able to derive about $245 million in the country. And in Ghana, about 60% of the population prefer fish to other meats when it comes to protein. And about the consumption per capita in the country is 26 kilograms per annum. And so it tells you that we are really consuming country when it comes to fish. And that is why it's very important. Apart from giving us this revenue in the country, it also engages the youth when it comes to employment. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Madam Minister. Let me turn to you, Ambassador. You know, a lot's been made. Norway's economy has relied heavily on the oceans, and so there's been a lot of experience gathered over the years as you continue to develop a sustainable economy. Maybe from the perspective of that country and the experiences over many years, what is the learning? What insights do you have that have really driven policy for Norway, and particularly your co-chairship as a country of this important initiative?
Good morning. This is working. Thank you very much, Charles. And thank you for the opportunity to the organizers to be on this panel. Well, you alluded to it. Norway's geographic placement and our history is very, very deeply anchored with the sea and the maritime resources, exploiting maritime resources, and it goes back millennia. It has always been, Norway has been throughout centuries and centuries about fish and timber, basically, and fish long before the timber. And you can see it also on how the population, how we are living along the coast, and going back to where Norwegians used to be farmers, going out with a small boat to, in a way, support them from the land, which was poor, and the fish that was rich. So this is, in a way, in a nutshell, the history of Norway through centuries and centuries. And obviously, we have developed from then today to be a technology-based, industrial-based fisheries nation, oil and gas, as you know, as well, nation. And of course, we have learned a lot through those centuries, and of course, accumulated knowledge over the past 50, 60, 70 years has been very important in how we manage our resources today. So, and as I said yesterday in my speech, I don't know if many people were there, but we have known our share of problems. We have had depleted fish stocks. The East Atlantic cod stocks were almost empty in the 70s. Where I come from myself, a small fishing town on the east coast, or west coast of Norway, in the 70s as well, the very important resources and the stocks of herring, that was the base of the wealth of the city where I come from, was also full stop on the fisheries there. So Norway has known a lot of problems and challenges, and in a way has adapted to them. And I know I'm answering too long on your first question, but yes, it means in fact that throughout our experience, we, I think, have accumulated some knowledge, and we have adopted what we call integrated management plans for marine areas. And I think you can say, based on three things, it's basically that you can't do anything without scientific basis for what you do. You need to know what you're doing. You can't manage without understanding. That's number one. And then you need to have something built around the total ecosystem. You can't make plans for one species, not for the other. You can't talk about the oil without talking about the sea and the fish resources. Of course, as my friend here alluded to, dilemmas, conflicts of interest are just an inherent part of being an ocean nation, and it has to be managed. And it means that different interest groups all the time have to be integrated and heard into what is being done. And the third point, in fact, they said we need empowered, effective institutions, impartial institutions that are basing themselves on the knowledge that we accumulate. And we have an abundant number of white papers on these things for anybody who would like to read, 170, 80 pages last year on our ocean management. But yes, this is why I think we think that by far we don't know everything, of course. We don't have any perfect plans or a perfect solution to all of our issues. They turn, but we think that, and this is why we have taken the initiative to the high-level panel on the ocean sustainable use, because we think that it is important to share that knowledge, and that is part of our comparative advantage when it comes to international cooperation. That's where we are good, so that's what we do. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ambassador. Now, let me turn to my brother from Kenya. I say my brother because actually I was a visitor and well hosted in Kenya for over 4 years of my life. You're a seasoned politician and at the center of policy, close to the government, especially this new government. So tell us a bit more about the vision of Kenya, given the importance of the ocean, not to your economy in multiple ways.
Thank you, moderator. First of all, let me appreciate for being invited to this essential summit, because this summit sits very well discussing one of the biggest resources that God bequeathed humankind, which is the oceans. Kenya and the blue economy. First of all, let me give you a background. Kenya has 640 kilometers of coastline and 200 nautical miles of exclusive economic zone, which is basically around 230,000 square kilometers. We have underutilized the ocean potential. The per capita consumption of fish in Kenya is 4.7 kilos per year, which is very low in comparison to the global per capita of 20 kilos per year per person, or even the continental average per capita consumption of 10 kilos per person per year. So essentially, Kenya is sea blind. We don't know what happens there. The sea constitutes 40% of Kenyan's territorial area. We do less than 5% of fishing. We have literally very little benefits out of the sea. And so what the current administration has done is to look back and say this is an economy that has been underutilized and this is an economy that is not benefiting the residents of the country. First of all, is to organize the government structure around blue economy. And so we've established a Ministry of Mining, Blue Economy and Maritime Affairs to take charge of issues about blue economy. We've also established a Kenya Coast Guard to provide safe routes and safety and protection for the users of the ocean. We've also developed a plan, and what is defined as the bottom-up economic transformation agenda. Within that agenda, the blue economy, particularly fishing and maritime, plays a very pivotal role as part of the priorities of the current administration. So we're also focusing in part of the 9 priority value chains, fish being one of them, maritime being the second one, an export-oriented production. We're focusing on an export-oriented production. And I think many of you are aware that we've been playing a very big key role in trying to sell the operationalization of the African Free Trade Area Agreement to enable intertrade within Africa. And I think we want to utilize that opportunity through our maritime abilities. Kenya is also focused on a Greening Kenya initiative. 30% of tree cover is a target from 12% for the next 10 years. This includes regenerating the mangrove ecosystem, the coral reefs, and the fragile seagrass, a very critical area for carbon sink. And mind you, we don't get much benefit from the carbon sink itself. And I believe many other countries within Africa are facing the same situation. In 2017, we legislated against plastic bags. So it is illegal to carry plastic bags publicly in Kenya. And it is also illegal to carry any materials made out of plastics in protected areas, particularly along the ocean beach, in national parks, in marine parks. That one has totally been banned. Although the challenges of plastic bags remains very heavy, but we've criminalized it. And actually, that has helped us bring down the problem of pollution, of plastic bag pollution by almost 60%. Indeed, we have vibrant institutions doing bits of research here and there, doing capacity building, particularly the Bandari Maritime Academy, training seafarers. We have a target of about 4,000, and majority of them are going to be the youth. We've established institutions like Kenya Fishing Research Institute, Kenya Maritime Authority, but this is still a huge area of strength. It is still a huge area that requires focus, that requires potential. But because our knowledge of the ocean is still very limited. You know, when we have the biggest resource of tuna along the Indian Ocean, but we don't know how much is inside that ocean, I think it is still an area where research is required to understand the stocks and to understand many other things that to enable us be able to be better prepared to exploit the ocean positively. The Kenyan plan is based on creating jobs, creating incomes, and food. That's the big focus that the Kenyan plan is based on. And some of the critical, and we are looking at revamping all the value chains around tourism, all the value chains around fishing, all the value chains around maritime affairs, to be able to create more jobs, create more incomes, and help deal with poverty matters.
Thank you.
Yes,
before you start answering my second question, because I do have another question, so I will come back to you. Just getting that outlay of how different countries are approaching this is really important, and I think you've touched on a number. There are a raft of issues that we need to deal with in this space. Annually, the UN conducts a beach cleaning exercise in order to incentivize communities, and along with different local actors, Plastic Punch, and among others. And it's obvious that there are other areas too. One of the biggest things that's actually in the water, and particularly in the sand, is fashion waste. And there is a lot of importation of used clothing. There is a lot of fast fashion also going on, and UNEP actually have an ambassador who's working globally on this issue. So even beyond sort of the traditional things of plastic, and I think we should talk a bit more about some of the lessons on plastic. Cloth and other debris constitute a major hindrance on the coast as well. I mean, a raft of innovative approaches have been adopted. We have integrated coastal zone management, protected marine areas, combating illegal fishing, a real challenge here, madam, because of the coastal issues in West Africa, so it'll be interesting to hear your thoughts on that. A lot of planning. The last panel talked about the importance of planning, alternative sustainable fishing and aquaculture. We've talked about plastic reduction, harnessing energy from the ocean as part of an energy mix available, and a lot of the research which the last speaker was really alluding to. Let me come back to you, Honorable Minister, and really say, what do you think are some of the challenges that you're facing, and what sort of innovation are you bringing to addressing those challenges in terms of the national response?
Thank you. We have numerous of challenges in the country here when we talk about fishery sector. One of them is inadequacies in our legal framework to fight and deter IUU fishing, and also our responsibility to international obligation, which Ghana is a signatory to. We also have vessels that fish in Ghana waters and fly our flag, and they are not following the laws of the country. And that is why we need this framework to punish them, so it will deter them from doing all those things. We also have transshipment at sea, popularly known as ice cycle, between the trawler and the canoes. When the trawlers go for fishing on the high sea, then the canoes will go, and when they catch the juveniles, they sell to them on the high sea. And so it's also one of our challenges. And we also have issue to our regulations. That is Act 625 of the Fisheries Regulations 2010. The National Plan of Action to prevent and deter and eliminate IUU in accordance with the International Plan of Action to combat IUU is also another challenge. And no marine fisheries management plan as required by our Acts section 42 to 45 of the Fisheries Act 2002. We also have weak monitoring, control, and surveillance of the fleets on our waters. And the measures we are taking is first to enact our Fisheries Act amendments. And this is the Act 2014, Act 880 of the Fisheries, and then discharge international obligation. I mean, if we use this, we are able to amend this, our acts, we'll be able to discharge our international obligation. Apart from that, we also need to establish and operationalize fisheries enforcement units. We have them, but they are not enforced. And this is where we have some of the issues with the Section 94 of our Fisheries Act 625. And the law of the Fisheries Commission policy, and then the Attorney General with an officer of the Ghana Navy as the head at the office of the enforcement unit. We need to make sure that we have all these people there. We also need to prepare and adopt and implement the national plan of action against the IUU. And we are also implementing the vessel monitoring system and automatic identification system. And we are also deploying observers on board when they go for the fishing expedition. We put in our observers to observe. And we have also prepared and gazetted our implementation marine fisheries management plan. We have done this. We are also implementing closed season in the country. We all know that every year Ghana observes closed season. And this year, we are also going to do it from the 1st of July to the end of July for the artisanals. And then 2 months, that is 1st of July to the end of August for the industrial or the trawlers. The tuna section also do their closed season for 3 months. That is January to March. And these are some of the ways we are doing to, curtail the challenges. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Minister. Some really good examples. I think this brings out the point that just simply expecting that everybody will act in the best interest of the ocean will not happen unless there's actually strong regulation. I remember a key thing that shifted my attitude. Dr. Abrampa was talking about attitude shift. And it's over 10 years ago when I visited Rwanda, and there was actually, as you walked in, there was a very clear policy that if you're caught with a plastic bag, there are consequences. And it's actually an important jolt and shift to the mindset. And our colleague from Kenya has spoken about this. So I'm wondering whether Ghana, thinking forward, this is a low-hanging fruit for Ghana to quickly implement a policy like this that not only shifts attitude, but I think helps to reinforce regulation, particularly around plastics. I think that's an easy low-hanging fruit. Let me move to you, Ambassador Molestad. You know, there are lots of best practice that have come from Norway, given the role that you've played in this space. We even have shortly a program with UN Habitat, which is really looking at smart cities and integrating some of the learning and knowledge into the work that will happen here in Accra and in other model cities to really see how we are creating sustainable cities that don't impact the ocean. But do you want to highlight any innovation that you can think about that has really helped to address some challenges, and I think that the participants here could take away with them?
Thank you very much. Well, I think it's probably not easy to highlight one thing in particular. I think that, as I said earlier, I think that the fact that we have had some positive experiences, including with plastic, you know, you virtually wouldn't find that in Norway. It's the waters, you can bathe in the waters outside of the capital, the water is pristine. And this is something that has happened over time. So I think there is a multitude of innovative policies and technologies that we are trying to share through our different programs. But what I would like again to highlight, and I did it yesterday, but for the newcomers, is the Nansen program, which, as you know, is in a way run from the FAO in Rome, but a Norway-owned vessel, and that sails around the coasts of the world, and including this coastline, and provides this scientific base that is absolutely needed for any decision that is made on the blue economy, to just know what's going on. And I'm very, very happy that this vessel is coming back, including to Ghana next year. We have, as Norway, the Fish for Development program, but that the minister next to me here knows very well. We have been cooperating with Ghana within a number of areas, including aquaculture, where Norway has, I think, being the biggest exporter of farmed salmon in the world. We have developed a lot of technology and know-how within the aquaculture sector. That's something that we would like and do share. We have something called the Oil for Development program that has also been shared with Ghana, which of course has both the management dimension to it and the environmental dimension to it. So also in a way so that other countries that start in that sector do not have to make the same mistakes that have been made before. So instead of just taking one thing, it would be simple to think, yeah, well, yes, in Norway as well, you have to buy a plastic bottle and you get money for it. There's a lot of very high-level modern technology and thinking, innovative thinking going on. I think the important thing is to highlight for me that we think this is what we have to share with the world. This is what we know how to do. And we also have initiated a marine litter plastics program. We have taken initiative in the World Bank. We have taken the Blue Justice Initiative, because we haven't talked about that here, but of course illegal and unregulated fishing is also a huge problem, because we can regulate and manage as much as we want. As long as there is piracy going on and illegal fishing, we need also to have an eye open to those problems and to be able to resolve those. So internationally, there's a lot we can do together. really there is a lot we can do together and learn from each other, and there is no reason, as you alluded to earlier, to sit alone in a vacuum and in a bubble and not interact. So we are a partner in that sense, to share what we have learned through, as I said, a long, long, long time. Not meaning that we have the solutions, and not meaning that there is one solution for all, but at least there are a lot of thoughts that have been thought before, and that is something that we are willing and ready to share. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Honorable Nano. Yeah? I think this now is the space where maybe you can talk a bit about maybe some of those challenges. And I think the last speaker has picked up on a number of them, which also impact here. Piracy, its impact on the coast, and I'm sure the experiences from your coast and the Indian Ocean. You know, what are your thoughts on some of those challenges and the innovative responses that I think people can glean from as they plan forward?
Thank you. I think the first challenge I want to speak to is on IUU, the illegal, unreported, and undocumented. I think we can summarize all that to theft. It is just theft. And we have had opportunities of discussing this in various forums, both regional and international, on the high-level panel. And unless countries that are facing the same situation combine effort, then we're going to continue with this problem as we move forward. And I think it's critical for Kenya and other countries that own fish resources along the Indian Ocean, and also for countries that own fish resources along the Atlantic Ocean, to be able to combine effort to fight these menace. First is to establish regulations at home, laws that enforce, that criminalize this activity, that takes the toughest measures for those found to be fishing, because this is our food security being taken away. But also collaborative measures to oversight, but also to be able to control this particular problem. You will, in the upcoming communique, which the high-level panel has developed for leaders, the IUU is one of the critical areas that is going to be looked at as something that the global community has to deal with for once, just like we dealt with piracy in the Indian Ocean. Then, second particular challenge, you have to realize oceans are carbon sinks. But I'm not sure, just like Kenya, that we benefit a lot from the carbon credit that go with that. So the area of financing ocean action plans is a critical area to look at, and we've got to look at innovative solutions. I know at one point we had discussions when we were in Vancouver on probably having a small levy on ocean users, but only to realize this suggestion will have hurt us even more, because the developed world is the biggest importer of goods. And so you will transfer that increased cost to the beneficiaries. But of course, we've got to look at those innovative solutions. We've got to look at how carbon credit financing is being equitably shared out across those who are benefiting. We've got to look at how the biggest polluters of the ocean can be able to finance the efforts to make the ocean healthy. And of course, there's no particular solution for communities in benefiting from the ocean. Every country has got its own benefits. I think what is most important is to engage communities who benefit directly and indirectly from the oceans on what will be critically important for them to engage in to be able to gain value out of it. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Indeed, you raised one of the important issues around financing all of this work. And I think the next panel or a panel today will also be talking about this important dimension. We often talk about the knowledge and the innovation as if it's all new. And Ghana, through its Adinkra, actually has a very important and powerful saying, Sankofa, which is that actually, in order to go forward, you need to look back. And I think this is extremely important and a powerful concept for bringing what I think is an important dimension of indigenous knowledge to this. I mean, Madam, you've just spoken about closed seasons. And if you spend a short period on the coast here sitting in Jamestown and talk to the fisher folk, they've been doing this for hundreds of years. So I think that as we move forward too, we must find ways in researching these. And the last speaker was speaking to the importance of local communities, and indeed on the last panel, Dr. Abrampa was talking about how to build knowledge from the bottom up. So we must find research that actually says some of the real game-changing things that need to happen. Actually already that knowledge sits with us. We just need to amplify it rather than just consume only new knowledge. So as a sort of final segment, as we look forward, where do you see opportunity, Madam, for Ghana? What are the low-hanging fruits that will really impact the ocean? And where would you like to take things? This is where I'd like this last segment of the conversation to go. Over to you, Madam Minister.
Thank you so much. You just mentioned that Sankofa, yes, we know our fishers used to observe the close season in their own local way. That is not going for fishing on Tuesdays and some other days, which the chiefs and some of the fishermen are even calling for. Originally, if you look at the way we observe the close season, it's not even up to a month, because when the moon sets, they don't go for fishing because they are not able to get fish. And so implementing 1 month close season is basically just 2 weeks. And some of them are calling that if we could extend the number of months of observing the close season. Now, the observation of the close season is not going to be only in Ghana, but we are trying to extend it to our other partners, the regional bloc, that is the FCWC, Liberia, Nigeria, Togo, Cote d'Ivoire, and Benin. These 6 regions or countries are going to observe the close season. In fact, this year we'll be doing it in Cote d'Ivoire. That is where we'll be declaring it. And I believe if we continue to do this, it will help to reduce the pressure on the sea. And also, as I mentioned earlier, enforcing our laws. Enforcing our laws is something that will help us and take us a long way to be able to sustain the ocean. And fighting the illegal activities. The enacting of our laws, fortunately, the Norwegian is supporting us to do our new law, and FAO is also giving us the support to do the regulation. And so when we are able to do all this, I believe it will take us a long way to prevent and sustain the ocean. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Madam Minister. Ambassador, what are your thoughts about where you see opportunity, perhaps some low-hanging fruit that we can latch onto as we kind of take the so what forward from this summit?
Well, what I think is important, and bringing it back to the international cooperation and the challenges that we face as a global community, I think that it's not exactly a low-hanging fruit or a low-swimming fish or anything like that, but it's true that I think that there is a moment in time now where there is an increased global awareness and understanding for the importance of the ocean. And we heard yesterday about the 3 Ps, produce, protect, and prosper, that the ocean is our future. I think all of what has been said yesterday and what has been said today, it leaves me with a certain sense of optimism in that particular sense, that I think that there is an increasing understanding amongst policymakers internationally. We have seen it with the BBNG as well, the Biodiversity Convention that was recently negotiated. We saw it in 2015 with the SDGs, how important the ocean is. And I think that with partners, the private sector that has spoken, it is sinking in that we cannot continue to disrespect the blue planet and these resources, and we can't even comprehend, as they said yesterday, human existence without it. So it's such a timely event, this, and I think that, and now I'm quoting one of your former presidents. I heard Africa Day, former President Obasanjo said that, "I like political will, it's good, but political action is better." So maybe this is the time for action, and I think that a lot of what is being said proves that there is a willingness, and well, I'm going from this panel and from these 2 days, thanks to the SDG Union of the Presidency, optimistic in terms of what we can achieve together in the future. And again, we promise to be a partner. Thank you.
Thank you very much for those inspiring words. Honorable, from Kenya's point of view, low-hanging fruit, things, opportunity. You've talked a bit about finance and the need for finance. Where are we going to see the lines of hope from Kenya that we can all draw inspiration from?
Thank you. I think first, it's important that every country develops its blue economy plan, ocean plans. Ghana is doing it now. Kenya will be next before the end of the year. But also, we need to develop collaborative action, both regional and globally, on making sure that we've conserved the oceans and we have used them for the benefit of humankind. Second matter is the financing of Ocean Action Plan. Kenya has been in the forefront of looking at innovative solutions towards financing ocean action, looking at options and ways of reforming international financing architecture to respond to the global crisis on climate change, the global crisis on the blue economy. And this is one of the reasons why, as the President of Kenya, as the chair of the Heads of States Committee on Climate Change, is organizing the African Climate Summit in Nairobi in September to come up with a common position for African heads of states and governments that align with their national interests, but also that ignites interests within the continent, but globally, but also looks at collaborative action, working closely with governments, with the private sector, with communities, to ensure that we have a plan and a strategy to be able to make sure that we meet all the goals we require for making sure our oceans are healthy and our oceans are our source of wealth for the people of this planet. And finally, is to look at consuming seafood, particularly fish. In Kenya, for example, only 12% of fish consumed is from the oceans. The rest is from within inland lakes and rivers. So it's a critical area to encourage people to understand the value of what they can be able to acquire from the ocean by trying to see how more of their diet will be constituted by ocean food. And I think this is a critical area where the African Free Trade area will have to play a much bigger role. Because if we increase the consumption of ocean food within Kenya, then I can tell you that there will be much more knowledge at the grassroots on what happens to the ocean. And of course, a lot of the pollution into the ocean comes from inland cities and towns and rivers. So that people are aware, if you pollute in the ocean, you're actually polluting yourself. I think those are the efforts that we're looking at. And finally, is collaboration. I think it's critical. For Kenya, we will be working closely with the Norwegian government to collaborate action on developing the blue economy, the Kenyan Sustainable Ocean Plan, moving forward, so that we can be able to be part of the rest of the countries that wants to change. And very final, the Nairobi Summit also will enable me and Eugene, because we are only 3 countries in Kenya that are part of the high-level ocean panel: Kenya, Namibia, and Ghana. So that will be an effort to bring more of our colleagues into the picture, and so that we can be able to join the coalition of those who want to protect the oceans. Thank you.
Thank you very much. You'll agree with me, a very wise panel here, sharing a lot of examples from financing to collaboration, regulation, and the linkages between the different sectors. I know that just from watching the last panel, I know that suddenly huge numbers of hands went up, and that Jerry is standing in the background there to help me. I want to open the floor a bit with just one caution. It's not yet election season in Ghana. Please don't start by delivering any manifesto. You will not, your success or not in the Ghana elections will not be made in this room. So if you have a point to make it quickly, sharply, and let's take a few of those comments as we build the collective knowledge that we need to ensure that we're not reinventing wheels and relearning lessons that have already long since been learned. So if you just raise your hand, Jerry will come to you to share your thoughts. Oh, wow. Okay. So nobody particularly, oh, well, there is one hand right at the back. I'm not sure. Yeah. Okay. So we have a couple, and maybe we'll close it at those 2. 3? Okay. So, Madam, your glasses are better than my eyesight, clearly. I need to work on that. So 1, 2, 2, and then I hear there's a third hand over there. So, and that's it, and then we'll close. Your 30 seconds starts now.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. My name is Divine Walanyo Huto from CSIR. You have indicated that in a while UNEP has considered cleanup actions around some few beaches in Accra. It is very, very a good thing. However, the interest is, I would want you to share with us, if possible, what the plan is after 5-10 years of running this very important initiative. What is hoped to be achieved? Are we hoping to achieve some behavioral change in how plastics are managed, at least within coastal areas? And again, you mentioned that one of the dominant wastes that you come across is secondhand clothing. Today, people are considering training young ones into using plastics as reusable materials for art and other important ecological artifacts. Would your initiative consider these while it engages itself? Thank you.
Thank you for that. Should we just take the questions and then maybe come back to the panel?
Sure. Yes, Kojo Williams. I'm a researcher on my own, yeah. I was thinking that the paper bag to replace plastic bags. Not only paper, you can use coconut fronds, you can use palm fronds to make bags for shopping. You know, we already have coconuts, and so no problem. Then we can think of cooperatives, you know, the communities where the waste is being removed, and NGOs and government can have waste recycling centers right there where it is, at the beach or wherever. You know, that's another point. Then, of course, we'll need grants from corporations, the World Bank, agricultural banks, you know, to get the communities involved. You know, they have to be paid, not that they're just doing it for free. So it will be for the corporations, it will be their corporate social responsibility. So those are the three things that have come up from my head right now.
Thank you very much. And the last speaker, or the last person.
Hello, good morning, everyone. My name is Nana Bwedu Adeko. I would like to use this opportunity to recommend the Honorable Minister for her contribution in the field and the sector, particularly in terms of the close season. I think she has opened the door for researchers to bring out their findings and also explain to the fisher folks what this close season does to the sea and also the contribution it does to the sector. But I would recommend that there should be some further dialogue between the fisher folks and also the researchers, their research funders. How can they easily explain it to us so that we can understand it? You know, the science is somehow complex. Can they do it in such a way that our women within the coastal line could be able to appreciate these sciences back in the close season? Thank you, Honorable Minister.
Thank you very much for those questions, and I was relieved. I thought perhaps I was only going to get questions from men, so thank you, Madam. Let me start at the end, Honourable. Any of the comments that you'd like to reflect upon, and maybe just a closing statement from you.
Yeah, I think I like the comment that was made on the floor by the two individuals who spoke about plastics and behavioral change. Indeed, this is something that has to be worked on, because the more people learn that the plastics are going to clog and pollute the ocean and spoil the quality of the fish they consume and other foods, then the more they're going to change. But I think most critical is the alternative use of biodegradable materials. I think you've talked about coconut leaves, the palm leaves, various palm leaves, and many others. So those alternatives. In fact, in the Kenyan stores and shopping centers, you will find these materials are more and more being utilized. I think 99% of the shopping bags are made out of these biodegradable materials. And of course, they offer employment to the youth by focusing on collecting and also focusing on processing these to produce various other materials. That is already employment for quite a number of youths who don't go to school. So I think it's an area of low-lying fruits which Ghana can focus on. I think we're working on it. We're still improving various areas. In places like cities, Nairobi City, for example, we have 5 rivers that form into a river that flows into the Indian Ocean. We've got a very huge plan to to do solid waste to energy projects. Among the various basin priorities that we're working on to clean the rivers, one of it is converting some of the solid waste into energy. And this will literally assist in minimizing the amount of waste from cities and towns along the coastline from polluting inside the ocean.
Thank you very much. Coming closer to me. Ingrid, would you like to share any final thoughts from the comments? From the floor, or any thoughts yourself?
Well, I think I was, in a way, close to a closing statement earlier, but of course I realized that the marine litter, plastic pollution topic is one that is very much on the public's mind. And of course, living in this country, Ghana, and also seeing the gentleman and the single-use plastics when introduced, that happened in some countries. In my country, there hasn't been a ban, but we pay for the plastic bags, and we can deliver back the plastic bottles and get money for it, as you talked about. There are a lot of innovative approaches that can be taken. What I would like to highlight is that from when I was a little girl myself, throwing litter on the ground was bad. You know, it was not something that you could do. You would never see people doing it, and it was inculcated in our minds from small childhood. I think education is key. Feeling ownership to the nature around you, to Mother Earth, protecting her, enjoying a pristine environment, all of that is something that needs to come from a young age as well. So I would just say that education, campaigns, sensitization of youth, I mean, saying to the chief, don't drop it, I think that's very much a part of how it should be. So yes, I think there is a lot to be done, both low-hanging and not so low-hanging fruits, but I would love to see Ghana going in the direction of less polluted, for example, the beaches, which would open up for so much more tourism, and so that you could really, really see the beauty of this country at its full potential. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ingrid. And finally, you, Madam Minister.
Thank you. As Madam Ambassador mentioned, we need education and sensitization. But when we do all this, and the human beings, we don't psych our own mind. Like my brother asked, is it behavioral change? We need to change our behavior. If you don't change whatever sensitization, whatever education they give you, I mean, if you don't make up your mind to change, it will be very difficult. And one may think it's not causing us. It's today that it has rained this morning, go to the beach and see the number of waste, the plastics. We are the very people doing it. And deliberately, somebody will pour it in the drain, in the gutter, and then the rain will take it into the sea. And apart from polluting the sea itself, it's causing the fish in it. We are consuming it. Whatever you put in there, the fish also consume. You take it in, and you also have your own problems. And it kills the species in the sea. So I believe the behavioral change is very, very important. We need to have a positive mindset towards the ocean. And if we do that, it will help us. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much to the panelists. Just one last comment from me. I didn't realize I was a panelist. I was merely moderating, but there was reference to some of the work around what I call bearing witness, the importance of of some of those actions on the beach to clear. If you go to these beaches, you'll realize that actually it's a fairly futile effort unless other things are done. But I think it's important to bear witness, to bring attention to these issues, to raise awareness, and to use those to connect to the ocean of everything. And so building on the examples here, I think that the whole business of looking for how to address this core issue of plastics, and maybe Ghana needs to look at the lessons from Kenya, where there's been a ban, and Rwanda, to the kind of hybrid version that we have from Norway, to see what should happen and what could happen now around that. I think there are other areas where we're seeing masses of dumping taking place. And the whole fashion industry, fast fashion means that there's a lot of it to throw away. A lot of it finds its way onto the continents here. And so there are connections and actions in terms of what Ghana and other countries are prepared to accept to come into the country. And it's sold as cheap and beneficial, but actually it's dumping. And so, you know, looking at government policy in these critical areas, I think is really, really important, and building local businesses. Because if we connect all of these things together and get to this circular economy model, then I think we'll be better able to use our waste in ways that means that we're able to live a sustainable life. So those are my 2 cents. And let me, on behalf of the presidential advisor to the SDG unit, thank you, panelists, for your kind time, and thank you, audience, for listening. And have a wonderful rest of the conference. Thank you very much.
Let's capture this moment. We want to thank you ever so much, Your Excellency Charles Abani, for moderating this very high-level panel. There have been lots of insights, and I believe it is leaving us with great nuggets to reconsider our relationship with the ocean. We've done well with time, although we started quite late. We shall break for coffee. It will last for only 10 minutes, and then we can reconvene. I encourage you, like we did yesterday, just go out, fetch yourself a cup of tea or coffee with your snack, and please come back in. Let's just grind and finish well. All the best. Bon appetit. I'll see you shortly.